What's next?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say from like an artist perspective, I don't know, man. I've been like, there's been a lot of different like technological, technology advancements that like, they're even talking about like AI songs, like producing records, like gathering data and just like spitting out records based on that data, like spitting out a song based on that. So it's like, it's scary. I mean, like honestly, that's why I'm not so sold on, and don't kill me for this, but live entertainment for the music space, because it's like, I don't know, I mean like these festivals are popping up left and right. That's like the last sort of, I guess, personal connection we have, but then we're talking about, AI created
hologram
music, hologram, it's like, that last part that gave us that personal touch is now gone. So I don't know. I think it's obviously gonna be technology based, like, and I'm seeing it every day. The labels are definitely a little bit behind in terms of their payout systems and the technology they're using. And ASCAP, BMI, they're also certainly behind in terms of their portals, and the digital companies popping up left and right are sort of running on that. They're like, you know what, you can just type your numbers in and you can actually see your royalty payments, and they're coming from this. And Apple, it's coming. So it's like, that stuff is great. So I think I'll end with this. I think it's a less personal environment in entertainment than it used to be. It used to be a very emotional, connected space, but we're also looking at it maybe a more transparent space, especially at least on the artist producer side, like more transparency. You get to see a lot of those inefficiencies that had artists, not seeing royalties for 20 years and having, 5 records in the top 10. That's probably going to not happen anymore just because of technology.
Yeah, I have artists still haven't got paid since 2003.
Oh yeah,
We trying.
give me a call.
I'm telling you, mad out here.
I mean, I guess my reaction, and don't worry, I get it. And I think maybe this being a byproduct of being the 80s and then seeing all those movies about technology and how it's going to take over and the robots are going to take over. And I think as that continues to happen, that there's going to be a counter movement to hold on to the human elements that we have.
Vinyl records, I think it's a great example.
Yeah, the vinyl records, if you're in here. Yeah, so that still is relevant today. You'll still walk in shops and still see vinyl records sold. So that's what I hold on to. I do think your point, and I was pretty scared probably 5 to 7 years ago in the sports world, given how good that viewing experience has become from home. It's really hard to convince me to travel from Long Island to MetLife Stadium to go see the Giants.
Oh yeah,
And that's probably for most people. That type of event once a year is an easy one. But that is concerning, and I think that home experience there hasn't been a huge improvement, in my opinion. Like there was this whole conversation about 4K. I don't really think there's been a huge change, but that high def really did change it.
yeah.
But you still see people going out. I know you'll see the headlines of MLB attendance down. It's not as dramatic as they make it, in my mind. NFL has been pretty consistent. NBA down maybe 1%. So the numbers are still pretty stable at this point. And given how much more there is to do in the entertainment world at this point, you look at how big Broadway is, you look at the family sector. As I've got 2 kids, so a 4-year-old, 2-year-old, there's nothing better than me taking them out to go see live entertainment, whether it's a Disney show, whether it's a Frozen, that's another Disney show, I guess. Aladdin, yeah, all Disney. But there's a plethora of options now, and I think that's been part of it, is that there's something for everyone at this point. You wouldn't believe how big Monster Truck is.
Yes.
So I think that will continue to happen. You probably have more niche happening as well.
So from our side, obviously with the athletes, a few things that I think we're seeing increasingly. Obviously, one with the likes of Players Tribune, Uninterrupted, people taking their brand into their own hands. When we first launched, a lot of people were like, whoa, what is the influence of the league or the PAs? And I can't tell you, like, it doesn't matter what they think, right? Because the players can take their brand into their own hands. Exactly. And then the other side of that is lifestyle. The Blake Griffin wants to be a comedian, right? Like every athlete wants to be a rapper, rappers want to be athletes. And so this like cross-section, like some of our biggest athletes, all they want to do is do esports,
Yeah.
right? Like commercials and things like that. They don't want to be put on the field and portrayed as being an athlete. They want to be portrayed as like a father, a lifestyle, like a female advocate, whatever else. So I think that's really interesting. Then obviously with the rise of esports, and not just esports, but surfing, skateboarding, all of these niche sports are taking over, and that's thanks to the accessibility of broadcast, right? Like you could be watching Facebook, watch World Surf League, and then suddenly you become a surf fan. And so I think this idea that there's no longer like just a top 1% because everyone else is becoming equally as famous in their own ways.
I still think it's about the people who are able to connect with everybody individually. If you can look at 100,000 people and make direct contact with all of them, whether over the internet or not, those are the people who are going to be successful, because you want to back people, you want to enjoy people who you can relate to. And so whether it's, so it's like, it's about how can people build their celebrity in a way where they can connect with the most people. And it's harder to do over the internet, but it's still reasonable to do. I mean, we work with a very famous musician who probably none of you know, George Clinton and Parliament Funkadelic. Okay, well, whatever.
Okay.
So the point is, he can relate to people. Like, I'll never forget one show, and it was like, there was a dance floor, and because it was a record industry thing, no one really cared. And they were all around the outside. And he came out, and he saw there was no energy, and he literally went like, and he went person by person, and it might have taken 20 minutes, but by the end, every single person in the place had a personal relationship with him, and they were funking right there. And that's what you need to do, because people don't want, yes, there's a huge thing about robots making music now. It's insane. The vast majority of music in the world within a couple of years will be made by robots. And then other people are investing in companies that look at the zillions of songs and pull the popular ones. But it's still really hard to relate. And the people who are able to relate one-to-one to huge crowds are still going to be the ones who are successful.
Or even if you're able to relate to small crowds that get to talk to somebody else, they grow your fan base by themselves. I mean, I came to New York only like 3 years ago, and I only knew one person here. I found my first investor in New York in probably less than 60 days, and grew my whole company from just me going to different events, meeting people, and people seeing how I move and what energy I brought to the table. So a lot of times it is having a personal relationship with people and putting people first and just really talking to people, and that helps a lot in this business. What tools or methods do you use to help grow your business?
I think Ryan said this earlier, and I couldn't agree more. I try to find that area where people aren't focusing on and just try to live in that space. And there's a lot of stuff here that people try to make you feel crazy about, but it's like, nah, you're not crazy. Like, they're crazy. They're living in that past space. They're not there. So for me, it's like, I'll do a big deal, and then the next week I'm like, all right, what's next? Like, wow. What's the next big deal look like? What does that translate to in a distribution space? Let me go talk to these guys. Let me see if I can, get an advance. So, it's always, what are people not doing that you see? What's the issue that you see that people aren't seeing? And I think if that's like your day-to-day mentality and you follow through on that, I don't think you can lose. I personally don't think you can lose.
I think it evolves over time. So early on, I remember in like 2012, and it was just my partner and myself. It's like, what am I supposed to do? I think I could be really good at managing people, but I have no one to manage. So that was an interesting conundrum. But so at that point early on, I got a couple pieces of advice, which was, follow every dollar. So, make sure you pay attention to the dollars. And we talked about why businesses fail. The cash flow element's incredibly difficult. I have a controller here who just started this week, is probably laughing because she's like, oh, you don't look like you're watching every dollar as well as you should. But there's a lot of inflows and outflows now. But early on, every single transaction that happened. I looked at every single purchase. I would see if I knew the person who made the purchase, and it was easy at first. It was 10, 20 transactions, up to the point where it's probably 100 transactions a day. I would look at literally every single one of them. I still today will obsess over customer reviews. I get involved sometimes maybe too much into the weeds. And I'd say where, as we've kind of scaled and gotten bigger, I do a very good job, in my opinion. People can correct me if I'm wrong, but I do a very good job of delegating and just kind of trusting the people I've hired to do their, I don't want to say job, because I don't like that word really, but to do what they're supposed to do. And so it's putting the trust in people and then giving them responsibility and letting them run.
I think we're currently obsessed with processes, so it's a bit similar, but our CRM, we customize it, we do crazy things with it to make it applicable to account management as well as sales. And I think processes, whether you're one person or two or 20, you start realizing how quickly your days roll into weeks, weeks roll into years, and you're like, what the hell did I do? And the only thanks to process and whether it's like a diary or how you manage your time or anything else. And so I'd say the most thing that I think when people fail, you lose money, it's actually because of a lack of process and also targets and hitting those and a plan and everything else. So I think whether you're one person trying to start your business, you should run it like it's a machine and you're much bigger than that.
Really strong coffee. And curiosity and desire. And the ability to focus, and if something isn't core, to mercilessly slash it out of your day. Because all you have is time. And you can amplify it by making connections with so many people. I don't know any great entrepreneurs who hide in a closet and do it all there. It's all about having a real interest and desire and working on something that's just so fascinating to you. Because if it's really, really interesting, if it's not really interesting to you, you're in the wrong business and you're going to fail. I don't know anyone who is successful in an area where it's like, oh, I can make a lot of money doing this thing that I really have no interest in. And I know plenty of people who have done very, very well because it's what they really love and want to do more than anyone else. But, it's really just these aren't really tools, but it's like mental tools. It's like, how do you focus on, I don't know how many hours a day everyone's really productive. What do you think? 3 hours? You work 13 hours to have 3 hours that are like jamming? But if you can get yourself into the flow state, when I'm in my flow state, in 2 hours, I'll do weeks of work. And when I'm not feeling it, it could be 6 weeks and nothing happens. So how can you mentally really get to where, you're in it? And if you can do that, you'll be successful.
Great. How many of you have heard of the author Simon Sinek?
Yes.
Have you ever read Start With Why? All right, so for me, that was something that helped me a lot when I came to New York, because I was never a person who liked to talk. I was never a person, I just like to help people. Like I played sports at Florida State. I was always the type of person, if I get an interview, I want to talk about somebody else. I never really liked the spotlight on me. Just like, no, talk to them. But I had to find out why I was so passionate about helping people. And I turned that into building a school back in Atlanta. And for me, reading that book, learning my why, I was able to talk to people about how to invest in me, because most people that invest in you don't invest in what's going on, they invest in why you're doing it. So if you haven't read that book, definitely go read it. Panelists, what are some of your favorite books that you have read or that you can offer to the crowd?
My wife and I were laughing about this question because I don't really read books. And she laughed, she's like, you don't read? I was like, all day long, all I do is read. That's all I'm doing. I'm reading emails, I'm reading news, all day, it's just reading constantly. And so that's what I do. I obsess over news. I want to be a subject matter expert in our field. So, I've got probably 5 different Google alerts that are set up. We just started internally a new weekly email to kind of get news. I actually saw one news piece in that weekly summary that I hadn't seen. I'm seeing the customer feedback and reading those pieces. So that's for me what's kind of best for my business. Maybe not best from a personal front, but they're tied, as an entrepreneur, they're tied incredibly tight to each other.
I understand.
I used to go through a phase before I started this and tons of self-help books and kind of philosophy, awareness, and
Is it one that stuck with you?
it's like darker places in my
Hey, but some people in here might have been in a dark place, you know?
there was a book, nothing to do with business, it's called Loving What Is, I really liked.
Okay,
That's one that comes to mind.
look that up, people. Loving what is.
The most significant one for me, and it's an ancient book, even from before the internet, is How to Master the Art of Sales by Tom Hopkins. And what he basically teaches is you need to relate to people, and it's all about the numbers. You kind of have these funnels, and you get 1,000 people interested, and then 100 really interested, and then 10 will close. And what I've learned, it's so funny, I take so many lessons to this day. If somebody's like, we're so close to all these deals, my question is, how many people have said no? Because if nobody said no, you're not selling it hard enough. You need you need to really find the way to get enough people interested in what you're doing and funnel it down until the right people pop up. And only sell to people who are going to be happy. If someone's, I sell sponsorships, and if it's not going to work for somebody, I don't want their money. Because it's a long-term relationship business. And if I could build relationships with all of you, then, really loose relationships, and then 10% of you are like, Brian, I'm going to follow up. Brian Zisk, brianzisk@gmail.com. Feel free to reach out. And I already know there's at least 5 people here who we're going to do stuff, right? But you got to find the way to reach as many people as you can, and you can't hook them all up, but get out there so the ones who want to work with you kind of rise up. So it's How to Master the Art of Selling by Tom Hopkins. It's probably long out of print, but it changed my life.
I would say too, I feel like there's always the self-help books are huge, but I think my generation in particular definitely has a subject matter issue. They're just reading all these books instead of nonfiction books. What happened? You gotta read the history and then form your own opinion and just get educated from the ground floor. So self-help books are cool. Ryan Holiday, Eagle's the Enemy, that's a good one. But whatever area we're trying to get into, learn the history, from the beginning. And those are the books that we should be reading.
Yeah, on that note, I'd say Shoe Dog is a great
I
book.
was just going to say that.
Yeah, and then also The Hard Thing About Hard Things is a great book for entrepreneurs. In fact, read it once a year because you'll be at a different point in your life, and it's really helpful every year.
What was the name of the last one?
The Hard Thing About Hard Things, Ben Horowitz.
All right. Well,
Ready to open it up?
We'll open it up. If you guys have any questions for any of the panelists, we'll bring a mic over to you. Just raise your hand, and Michael,
first here.
who started and founded this whole thing, will bring it to you.
Hello there, and thank you. My question is actually about the business model, because I've created something that's become a monster. It's not fun. So, any thoughts on that? Oh, it's independent publishing. I have a press, but I'm also starting for startups, because people are starting their own presses. I've been teaching other people how to do it, and I foresee that the industry's changing such that we have these big 5 monsters, and I think what's going to happen is we're going to have lots of smaller ones, and I'm hoping that they can operate more professionally, so that the self-published author kind of goes away because the content is crap, and that we get better quality products. So, I don't know if that clears it up.
So are you asking about different types of business models in general, or?
Right, so for example, I have a press, and we all know what a press does, it produces books. But I am in an indie space, which means that technology and the way people read and how they access the writers, everything is changing, right, in that space. So my question is, how do you, my concern is this, I want there to be great books out there because I'm passionate about them.
Right.
And I want them to be good, and I think people have good messages. So how can I make it so that more people can produce better quality content?
Well, you learn. I mean, obviously you're doing it for a reason, because you love wanting to do great things. And now you're seeing that by opening it up to people, it's not as much great stuff. But how can you focus in on the parts that are really good? You're in a tough spot because you're competing with Amazon. And that's really tough. You know, they do their self-publishing too. But you look at the great entrepreneurs. I look at like Justin Kahn, you know, who did Justin TV and da-da-da-da-da. And then he pivoted to Twitch, which is like $1 billion company. And why is it? Because by knowing the space better than anyone else and knowing what you really want, you can see opportunities that other people can't. And you have to be really careful about the business model, because there are plenty of things. I mean, like I learned, I used to buy and sell tchotchkes, right? And what I learned, and you can take different lessons, is if I had to pay $10 to sell it for 11, I could never keep inventory. And if I could pay 3 cents and sell it for $10, I can make a huge amount. But it's only from doing the business that you can realize where the real opportunity lies. Like in the ancient music business, there was a guy, Michael Robertson, and he had a search engine. He didn't care about music. But all of a sudden he saw, why is MP3, why are searches for MP3 going through the roof? So some guy who, like, his name was, initials were MP, and MP1 was gone, and MP2 was gone, so he got MP3, and he didn't really care about it. But Michael saw, this is like all of a sudden trending through the roof. So he was able to know something that no one else did. So what do you see? Can you identify these folks who are going to be really, really successful and find a way to add value to what they're doing that no one else can? Because there are plenty of businesses where the business model just isn't that great. And when you start talking about digital, it can work better, because the reality, it used to be like more people got put out of business because they did an album and they pressed 1,000 CDs and they sold 500 of them, and then there were 500 sitting in their apartment. And that was a failure. But now, you look at something and someone does an album and they put it up on the internet through a distributor and they sell 500 albums and make $5,000, and it's a huge success. So what is changing that you recognize that you can do to help? But you got to be careful of the business model, and I'll tell you something else. If it's moderately doing okay and you're getting burned on it, time to figure out what to switch to. Time to figure out if there's a way you can hand it off and maybe make a little money or have a little success. Or I sold my first company and no one needs to know you made $20,000. Or, I mean, I look at all these companies that are like, we had an exit, woohoo! I sold a company to Ardio, woohoo! No one made a penny, woohoo! But then it's a success. And how can you look at it as a success and not be like, I wasted 5 years, that sucked? You have all these fans who are like psyched for what you do and psyched for what you're going to do next. And how can you help them by changing to do something that is more exciting to you, which will then be more exciting to the people who want to work with you?
Who are your users? I'm just curious.
I'm so sorry.
Who are your users? Who are your customers? Who are you trying to serve?
I'm working with writers who want to publish in less than a year, and they don't want to go through the whole get an agent, get a publisher, get no for an answer.
How do you beat Amazon?
Amazon is not my competition as far as I'm concerned. They produce anything and everything, and I curate my content. So for me, it's about, we can't, if you can then the bookshelf, the digital bookshelf is endless, but it doesn't move. That content is there, Amazon has it.
So
It doesn't-
maybe it's more about being a curator
Yeah.
or an agent and being like a talent scout or helping being part of these great projects.
That almost sounds like a label in music to me. It's like finding the best artists and making sure, like, if you're J. Cole, you got Dreamville. You have the best artists here and you're putting out the quality content. People know to come to you for this quality content.
But it's like, for that model, it's like, come to me, but I'm not universal. I'm this, something over here.
Yeah, niche. So it's
Right.
like TDE or
Right.
Dreamville or.
Yeah, I mean, there's the human component, this is the last point. There's a human component, even if technology moves in, that's not gonna go away because we're all humans, okay? So what I'm saying is the model that I've come up with is you have that service that some of you provide, and we need that to succeed too. People need that. It's better than an 800 number, right?
Right.
So anyway, the point is that that's part of the model is you keep the human component in, you curate the content, you help to bring better product. But anyway, there's a whole startup world going on there, and I'm trying to tap
I
into
actually think you should
it.
look at some of the great, like,
Yeah.
small niche labels and stuff and see how you can break it down and, like, develop it for what you're doing.
Got it.
Because I think it's product is putting out great products, and it's kind of like the same formula, but just different industries.
Right.
I think you should kind of like look at those and break it down, and then see how to like implement it to you.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
Yeah, so just to add to that real quick, I do think the future is curation too, because we are overloaded with information. There's so much content, so many people doing videos, so many people doing courses, so many people releasing books. Why do we need all of that? We just need the really good stuff, right? So, also for future questions, let's keep them more general. But no, it was great. I thought that was really cool.
Hold on, one
Like
more thing.
business
You,
model.
I think you can actually build on your profile yourself too. Like if you become known in this space for you, like I think more quality people will come to you for this, and people will look to you for these things as well.
Niche is the way to go now.
And sometimes the big industries don't have the tap into the talent. So sometimes it's like partnering with the folks where it's like, I was gonna do something totally original, but now I'm with a major label. Or now I'm with the major labels don't hire, well they do, but they want the young kids who are tapped into what the young kids want. So if you can really filter and curate, we can tell you have passion, that's what's really valuable. But sometimes you're not plugged into the economic system that will allow you to make more money. But if you can work with a big publisher and all of a sudden you're bringing them best-selling authors because of the passion that they can't recognize, that's incredibly valuable for you. But then the problem is you're working for a company and you're not an entrepreneur, and then you end up.
We have a question right up front there.
Yeah, this is really great. Everything that I'm hearing, I'm absorbing, and I'm really taking it back and thinking about how can I improve on what I'm already doing. One of the questions that came to mind for me is something I've been struggling with the past few months. And it's, a lot of us start off by ourselves when we're taking that journey on the road to entrepreneurship. You're by yourself, you're solo. Eventually, whatever it is that you have that you're building is gonna be too big for you to do by yourself. How do you strategically and efficiently bring on partners?
What type of partner are you looking for?
That's part of the strategy.
What do you need?
Trying to figure out. So, so it's a variety. So I'm looking for strategic partnerships with other organizations or companies. I'm also looking for a shotgun partner to kind of help with ideation and bringing different components and elements of my platform to surface.
So you're looking for like a more high-end partner, not like someone taking some of the work that you shouldn't be doing, working on bigger issues. You're looking for someone who can.
Right, and that's the primary goal.
Right.
So you own 100% of what your business is right now?
Yes.
And so are you willing to give up some of that?
Of course,
Okay.
yeah.
I mean, you're in the right place, right? But
Yeah, I'm hoping so.
Who are very good at what you actually need.
Right.
And
I've been doing events for a long time. And like I was just telling this young lady here, I got through what they call network overload. Because you just meet so many people, and most of them are looking to do whatever it is they're doing, which may be different from mine. So they're looking for the same thing I am, but with people who fit their particular business model. So I haven't gained any traction with that path of,
can you afford to pay a salary?
no. That's another thing. How do you, and the follow-up question I had was, at what point are you able to say, I'm at a stage where I can go to investors to seek funding?
If you were able to say the thing that you need, I want to get here, and to get here I need this. Can you say that?
Sure.
So what is that?
I think in order to move on to the next stage
Well, what's the next stage?
of my platform, well, so I am developing a platform called Socially that allows us.
Just to keep it general, I think the main thing is that whenever like you think about hiring or partnerships or anything else, the aim is that you're looking to, where am I trying to go, right? And then to get there, what do I need? So now when you turn to the young lady next to you, you're like, hey, I need to be introduced to Fortune 500, because that's where I'm going next. I want to do Fortune 500 events. And she might say, oh, actually, I know someone who works at Cisco. Let me introduce you, right? It sounds, and it's not, we do it too. I'll be like, I need to hire someone. People are like, what do you need to hire? And I'm like, I don't know, like a generalist. But the point being is, what's my end goal? When I know my end goal, I can say, and then even if you don't know what needs to get there, hey, my end goal is I want to do events that become ticketed, because at the moment I do free events. And she'll say, oh, that's really interesting. Let's talk about how you're going to get there. So I think knowing very clearly what your goal is that you're trying to get to is the only way that you're going to be able to bridge. You're looking for a bridge, but you don't know where you want to park the other side.
I got what you're saying. And I think what the point that you're making allows me to say, hey, I'm looking for someone to consult me on how to get sponsorships.
Great. So
You're in the right place.
you're in the right this guy.
No, I think, just to add to your point though, a lot of people don't really know what they want. You know, everyone's like, oh, it would be cool to have this or to do that. Like, if you can narrow it down and be focused with it, it's so
Well, you know
important.
people know what they want, but they kind of don't want to say it. I want to do biz dev. I just need more sponsors for my event. That's all you want to say. Hey, I need more sponsors. Who can help me in the crowd? And sometimes it's as easy as that.
break it down into
To add to this too though, all of my meaningful connections in the last 2 years have all come through the events. I'm from Pittsburgh. I started doing events in New York without knowing anybody. Jimmy reached out to me before I even came here and was like, hey, I do events too, let's connect. And then now we're partners, right? Our investors, same thing, all came through the events. You putting yourself out there, especially in New York City, you're in the best city in the world to meet other successful people. And there's a bunch of events going on all the time. I come to Pittsburgh, or come to New York every month to do these events and to go to other events because they're amazing. And you can meet incredible people here in New York. And you guys have a big advantage being here in this city, especially. And I'll let Brian add to it
And
too.
look at the